This is part 4 of my Outlander Season 7, Episode 12 review. If you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the show, please do keep on scrolling. So after we leave the scene with Lord John talking to Smith about how they could accuse him of being a spy because he was seen conversing with Jamie Fraser, who is a known Continental fighter and rebel, he starts to question how he's going to wiggle his way out of this situation because they have multiple angles to come at him with, and he is hoping for a loophole that he can find because he is a smart man, but he's realizing there's a narrowing window for him at this point. And after the mention of Jamie, they segue into Ian walking behind this wagon with the British soldiers, looking out into the field and seeing his Uncle Jamie, who he has believed is dead this whole time, and now realizing that he is very much alive. When Jamie sees Rachel, he asks why Ian is being held by them, and she explains the situation and what happened with William. Now, this would be a good point for me to mention that there was a whole sub-story with Jamie trying to get back to Philadelphia to find Claire that they have omitted. And Jamie meets another Quaker family, a single woman with 3 children who helps him. He has a back injury. There's just like an entire sub-story that they have cut out. I can talk more about that if anyone's curious, but needless to say, it doesn't happen this quick in the books. There's a lot more that happens in between Jamie getting back to Philadelphia and seeing Claire than the show is making it seem like happens in this period of time. So Jamie goes back and finds William further down the road and basically demands of him that he go undo what he did and have young Ian released. Now, I love this scene because it's really fighting fire with fire between the two of them. Jamie comes in with all his anger and just disappointment in William for throwing his cousin under the bus in this way, and insists that William listen to him and do what he says. And William immediately is like, I'm not listening to you. And Jamie says, oh, yes, you will, because now the cat's out of the bag. And if you really don't want to listen to me, I have no problem going down and telling your captain who you are and who you are to me. And he's dangling this threat of letting the circle of people who know who William is get wider. And William, that's like the worst thing to say to him at this point where he is so fragile still. And I could go on and on and on about how much I love this scene and how much it reveals about William. And again, I think Charles just played this perfectly, but like, he's trying so hard to not think of Jamie as this honorable man, and yet Jamie is here telling him to do right by his cousin and give him his word, and he carries himself in such an honorable way. And so for William, this is my personal interpretation, I think he's looking at this man and you almost see his anger, but then you almost see him like realizing and recognizing what Ian said to him, which is that Jamie is an honorable man and a strong, brave one, and someone who leads and people follow. And William is trying so hard to be a man, but he knows in so many ways he falls short of that because he hasn't lived enough. He hasn't seen enough. This is his first real battle. And at the beginning of the story when we meet him, like, he's so naive about the way the world works. And as soon as he goes through his first battle and actually witnesses how horrific it is, he recognizes that he has so much to learn about what it means to be a man. And he's been yes to death his whole life. He has this title that's entitled him to so much. And Jamie comes in and just completely flips that on his head. And I think in his eyes in this scene, you can see him give in to Jamie and then be angry that Jamie has that much control over his emotions. And then on the flip side of that, you have Jamie, who is struggling so much internally with how to parent William when William doesn't want him in his life, and that William keeps popping up in all these ways where Jamie has to protect him or wants to protect him or has to interject himself, and knowing that William doesn't want his help or advice or his parenting, essentially. And what I loved about this scene in the books that the show didn't touch upon is that When William walks away from him and Jamie's left standing here alone, he has a thought cross his mind about how if it came to blows with William, Jamie's not sure he could beat him, and that's because William is now a grown, strong man, and Jamie feels for the first time that he maybe couldn't overpower William quite in the way that he could have in the past, and that's a scary thought to him and a big realization. Back with Lord John, we see him run into Denzel Hunter, who is the medic at this camp, brought over to look at Lord John's eye. Lord John is a little drunk in this scene. And this is again a change from the books, because in the books, Denzel, has already left Philadelphia with Dottie, who is Lord John's niece and his brother Hal's daughter. And they had met, Denzel and her had met in London and have a relationship, and it's rekindled here at this point in America. And she chooses to go back with Denny and join him on the road as a rebel, and that goes against so much that Lord John believes, and obviously Hal, her father, the Duke of Pardlow. When Lord John gets here, he actually hears a girl's laugh and recognizes it as Dottie's laugh, and he sings a song that her and him have in common as like an unspoken call sign to one another. And so that is how Denny and Dottie realize that Lord John is at this camp. Obviously that is not happening. I don't know if they're going to have Dottie even be on the show at this point. And so Denny inspects his eye, and he is very drunk, and Denny explains to him that he needs to take it easy because whoever punched him in the face did some damage. In the books, they explain that he probably broke his occipital bone. They kind of copied most of the dialogue from the books into this scene. And later on, when he's talking to Smith, and Smith says he needs to get Lord John able to walk and be mobile, or at least be coherent again, it's because he doesn't have the best intentions for him, and Denny at that point realizes he has to come up with a plan. Back with William, we see him having young Ian released and sitting up on his horse as a theoretical man of honor and feeling lower than low at this point. And so that night he is invited out by some of his comrades to go to a brothel, and he joins them. Side note, in this scene in the books, the officer that invites him to go out is Sandy. We were actually introduced to Sandy at Ticonderoga, and I don't need to go into a subplot of that, but they swapped this guy out. This is not Sandy. Sandy was left at Ticonderoga. Now William gets there, and he just keeps drinking his feelings, and he overhears a conversation that a Captain Harkness is having with some of his men across the way. And Harkness is making some very vulgar statements about the women here, and William realizes that he is talking about Arabella and openly airing all of the things he plans to do to her, which are really repulsive and awful. All of this was direct from the books, almost verbatim. And just as Harkness kind of is about to get up and pay for Arabella, that's when William pulls himself together and tries to do the honorable thing here. And so William says that he will have her for the night, and knowing that he was so horrible the last time, he wants to make amends in some way, but she doesn't realize that he's doing it as a kind gesture until they get upstairs. So she's not exactly thrilled about this news either. William pays, and she's resigned to go with him upstairs, and Harkness at this point is very, very angry with William and with her, and so that's a concern that will come up later. And when they do get back upstairs to the room, William apologizes to her and expresses that he doesn't mean to do anything with her here. He simply wanted to make sure that she wasn't going to be bothered by Harkness at this point, and she still harbors a lot of resentment towards the events of the last time, but also questions his motives, because a lot of men say a lot of things to her, and she has yet to meet someone who actually wants to do right by her and mean it. Again, I will do another video talking about her more specifically in her storyline, but they have a nice moment, and he asks her what her actual name is, and she reveals that it is Jane. I think as they start to converse more, she starts to realize that he really is just a young guy that needs someone to confide in, and she happens to be the person. So come back for part 5 and we will discuss.